Collaboration between higher education institutions and the private sector has yielded fruitful results globally. For one, these partnerships allow students to engage directly with companies that they may see themselves working in, and so giving them direction and contextual insight into the skills that they need to acquire to be employed after leaving university. Hello and welcome to Invest Africa. I'm Nozipho Mbanjwa. Joining me to unpack this landscape of issues is Terry Torok. He's the Global Chief Innovations Officer for Enactus. Yunus Suleman, the former chairman of KPMG South Africa, is also at the desk and the chairman of Enactus. I'm also joined by Greg Vercellotti. He's the executive director at Dariel. And from our Lagos studios, we're joined by Stephen Adebayo Ajayi. He's the country director of Northcroft, Nigeria. He's also the executive chairman of the Weavers Hotel in Abuja. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me start off with contextualizing this problem. And maybe let me start off with you, Greg. At Dariel, you think about problems in a different way. What is the problem that is causing university output to not meet the needs and the expectations of the labor market?
I think that universities are not engaging appropriately with commerce in terms of what commerce needs. So the guys are getting good theory, some good grounding, but the problem is the specific skills they're coming to market with are not relevant to what the commercial market today is looking for. And so we'll end up spending so much time growing and adding to their skill set before the guys become commercially available to us.
So there's a disconnect. Terry, what is the scale of the problem? Is this something that is unique to South Africa, unique to the continent, or is this something bigger than we imagine?
I think there's things in common with the globe, but if you look at the unemployment rate in South Africa alone, climbing up over 26%, you say what industry could step up and help that kind of unemployment? So we believe investing in students who take entrepreneurial action for others creates a different breed of student.
Right.
Not only on campus, but off campus. And that kind of business innovation and entrepreneurial minds are the ones that are going to change that unemployment rate for our future.
I'm going to get into Nigeria in a second, speaking to Stephen in Lagos, but Yunus, let me come to you first. So we have an understanding of what the problem is, what the scale of the problem is, but what is the root cause of the problem of youth joblessness, and in particular graduate joblessness across the world?
I think they come out of university really not necessarily experienced in terms of what the practical experience it's required out in business. They come up with being taught the theory. And that's where Enactus comes in. Enactus literally makes them more employable, because by involvement in the projects out in the communities, they then develop leadership skills, they develop entrepreneurship skills, and they develop a number of other skills in terms of etiquette, professional dressing, a lot of things that will help them become more employable. And I think that bridges the gap. And that's why there's a much more sought after need for Enactus students rather than the general university public.
I look at it as a crash course in failing fast. In order to succeed, you got to fail fast, you got to learn in the real world. Yeah. So those college students all the way through don't always have that real world experience. So that's one of the things that Enactus.
So one of the things I think I'm going to enjoy with this conversation is bringing Greg in to help me as a referee. Greg, does this even work in practice? It works in theory, it works at the desk. But before we do that, let's go to Stephen in Lagos. And perhaps, Stephen, what you can give us a sense of is the particular Nigerian experience of graduate joblessness. What is the cause of that particular issue? What is this extent of that issue in Nigeria? And are there parallels that can be drawn from what we're experiencing here in South Africa?
Well, in Nigeria, the joblessness of the youth is a very huge problem in the sense that there aren't enough jobs to go around in the first instance. A lot of them are not employable. And also the focus in terms of the mindset of the youth in their expectations is a huge problem. Having said that, there's a mismatch between their qualifications and the requirements of the industry. That's certainly the case here in Nigeria. Also, there's an expectation that once you're a graduate, you have to work for either government or an industry. For somebody, there's no expectation that you can work for yourself. And that's part of the problem. And in a situation where the economy is not growing as fast as we are turning out graduates, in Nigeria, for example, we have over 147 universities at the last count, more than 100 polytechnics, colleges of education in the hundreds. When you are churning out such a large number of graduates year in, year out, and you have almost up to 50% graduate unemployment, there's a problem.
Stephen, I think that analysis is fantastic, and we're going to come back to the different sectors where there are opportunities for better collaboration, and the hospitality industry, where you're a big player, of course, is one of them. And before I come back to Greg, I want us to just get to the nuts and bolts of Enactus, how it works, how do you bring entrepreneurship into the university institutional space, and then we can begin to critique whether this is really helping solve the problem.
Sure, we're a community of business leaders, student leaders, young innovators, and academic leaders. So we work together in a convergence to make sure that we help provide students that opportunity, as Yunus had mentioned, off-campus experience, as well as understanding what true needs assessment and understanding the landscape better. So we bring in those sponsors early in to invest in those students, help invest in that education to help deliver that real-world solution. So I think a lot of, particularly in South Africa, but many places in the world, changing government policy to allow that to happen so we can have quicker innovation and get education operating at the speed of ideas.
Yunus, is it about creating students who can be self-employed entrepreneurs in that sense, or is it about the cultivation of an entrepreneurial spirit that you can take with you irrespective of where you're going?
I think it's a combination. If you look at a lot of the actual students become entrepreneurs in their own right, but there's a combination in terms of those that want to get into a corporate world before actually becoming their own or running their own business, and that's what happens. So for example, just to give you a perspective, tomorrow the national competition in South Africa commences, and you've got 20 teams which are from 20 different universities competing with each other, and they will highlight projects, and these projects are about community upliftment. For example, University of Fort Hare won the competition last year, and they had 2 projects. And I'll just talk about the one which is called a biomass digester, which is creating clean energy. And as you know, we've got a shortage of electricity. And this actually helped the community in Alice, which is in the Eastern Cape, actually have an access to electricity which they never had before. And through that project, they're creating employment in that vicinity. So I think it's about really kind of creating a real platform for upliftment.
So we'll come back to whether these programs and the project that the students take on live post the Enactus competition, because I think that's very important. But Greg, let's come back to young people with an entrepreneurial mindset. Are they what the labor market is looking for? Is this what business is looking for? Are such initiatives useful in a practical space?
I think they are useful. What we do find is graduates coming out of university, even with an honours and sometimes even a master's, have got that experiential gap and the soft skills gap, and even the entrepreneurial skills they haven't developed. So they come into the market and they've got to learn that very quickly. The young mind learns quickly and grows quickly, and so can benefit the commercial world very, very quickly if they've got additional expertise or experience beyond what the books say. So, for us, we don't want to be training guys in basic soft skills and in management skills early on. If that can come through from the universities, I believe the guys can hit the road running, and the economy can benefit from an earlier application of their skills and experience.
Stephen, we have a very interesting case study with the Nigerian experience of entrepreneurship. It's almost become the brand of what Nigeria exports into the continent and the rest of the world. Do you get a sense that that entrepreneurial spirit, even amongst young people, is harnessed sufficiently so that it actually makes business sense in the labor environment?
Well, I don't believe that they are effectively harnessed. We export some of our best talents abroad because there are limited opportunities at home. And when we talk of the youth, we need to talk about those uneducated youth, rural youth, and most of the solutions to these empowerment issues are very elitist in the sense that they don't take care of the army of youth below those graduates. And not only that, in essence, when you say the universities to train and educate in one sense, we have established institutionalized process of collaboration through the industrial attachment, to NYSC in Nigeria, for example. And also we have what we call the TED Fund, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, where private sector profits are taxed by government for investments in universities. But private sector has never consulted on their priorities regarding the expenditure of those funds. So when you have people who have no choice but to be creative in terms of what they do, to find a way for themselves in a very hostile business unfriendly environment, then some of them will go abroad. Not because they are not doing it by choice in most cases. It's just in most cases they have no choice and they think there's a better opportunity elsewhere. And in that sense, therefore, when we are looking at youth issues in Nigeria in particular and in Africa as a whole, we are forgetting an informal sector. There's an army of businesses that are not touched. For example, there are businesses that turn over a lot of money in the informal sector, the traders and the like, but there's no connection, there's no link between the youth and them, particularly the educated youth. The accountant doesn't go to the market to teach the traders how to do accounting or to work for them or to organize them in any formal way. So there's a substantial aspect of the economy that is ignored. And we only concentrate on those employers that we feel the youth can work with.
A quick response from Terry.
I'd be curious to know, you had mentioned about exporting talent, and a lot of the youth move out of Nigeria in that case. And that happens everywhere in the world. Is there an opportunity, Stephen, especially within the hospitality industry, to help open up those borders in a way that's attractive, not only for visitors, but businesses, and a way to attract more of the youth to stay within the country? And I also want to ask if there's an opportunity where you see collaboration with other young students around the world to get together to work and to help open up borders and make it more attractive, in this case, to stay within Nigeria.
I was in diaspora for almost 30 years. Part of the thinking is coming back to Nigeria, giving what I could. And we found ourselves in the infrastructure through the consultancy and to diversify into hotels. But one of the things that I ask for of young graduates is, one, that is he employable? Does he have the right qualifications and the like? And there are programs by Shopi where they send graduates to work with employers. And in most cases, if you have international dimensions to link up with the youth, it has been a one-way direction. A lot of people want to go abroad because they seek opportunities elsewhere. There is no corresponding inflow of graduates from other countries. And to that extent, it's caused a brain drain from Nigeria and indeed from Africa.
I think Stephen, let me jump in. We've opened up the conversation for really, really exciting takeaways, and we're going to pick up on some of these nuggets when we come back from this short break. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. And still with me in the Johannesburg studio, Terry Torok, Global Chief Innovations Officer for Enactus, Yunus Suleman, former Chairman of KPMG South Africa and the Chairman of Enactus, Greg Vercellotti, the Executive Director at Dariel, and joining us from Lagos is Stephen Adebayo Ajayi. He is the Country Director of Northcroft Nigeria and the Executive Chairman of the Weavers Hotel in Abuja. Now, before we went to the break, the conversation was developing around the various opportunities that could be unleashed from the expat movement that we're seeing in Nigeria. Let's go back to that point and let's take the conversation from there. I know that Yunus, you wanted to pick up on some of the comments that Stephen had made.
Yeah, as Terry was talking about, is like, let's open our borders. And I think when I look at Nigeria, where I lived for 2 years, there are at least 40 countries represented in the country because of the fact that you have oil exploration. And I think there's one opportunity to actually exploit the fact that these, call it explorers of oil, come in sometimes with their families, like I did, where I had my young children with me. And I think there's an opportunity to actually use those skills where these kids could actually be connected with, once they leave the country, to be able to really connect with other people within the country and have friendships that build on that, and also actually share knowledge and actually help to develop the students and the skills transfer much more effectively going forward.
I think the hot word that we've touched on, and Stephen, I want to come to you with this, is of course skills transfer, especially at a time when the African continent is become the top investment destination for many investors across the globe. Are we getting the skills transfer that comes with the foreign direct investment that we're seeing in the continent? In essence, are the young people benefiting from the African growth story?
Yes, they do. The question is in what proportion. You see, we are starting from a very low base of employability and employment opportunity for the youth, because a significant aspect of the economy is ignored. When you have big businesses coming to Africa or investors from all over the place, they tap onto the best talents there. And that is not a bad idea. You want to pick the best within the economy or within the nation. That is not a bad thing. However, you have a large army of people below them who are not getting employed, or they are probably not employable. And what do you do with them? What needs to happen is to acknowledge that the world youth is a conglomerate of many youths. You have to, and they have different priorities. And given that situation, you have to have policies that address each priority of these different groupings. For example, the uneducated youth, you find them hanging around garages and doing transports and all the rest of it. If they are in the urban centers, those of them that are fully engaged, or hawking on the streets. Now, the informal sector is not regulated. They are not thought of as a business in the right sense of it, because they don't exist in the data. But they employ a lot of people. There are a lot of youths. So when people come into African setting to invest, of course there's an opportunity for the graduates. It's an expansive market in that sense. But what is not happening are those who are less qualified to tap into such opportunities. Right. What is happening to them?
The point that I think Stephen is bringing to the table is that a blanket approach from a policy perspective is not going to solve youth unemployment. And we will have initiatives which are targeted at graduates that will speak only to graduates and leave a huge portion of the youth population untapped. What's your thinking about what kind of policy levers we should be thinking about to tackle not only a graduate unemployment problem, but perhaps to look more holistically, as Stephen is suggesting, at youth unemployment?
Absolutely. So, just looking at the professional sector in South Africa, for example, at the moment we have 76,000 unfilled engineering posts. We import 5,000 software engineers from the East and from India, in a country where we've got so much unemployment. So we have a skills crisis on one end and an unemployment problem on the other. The universities and higher education will fill that gap, but the challenge we face, and I hope you gentlemen can get this right, is to help bring those guys into the economy more quickly or quicker, and let them be economically active earlier on in their careers. So it's a money saving, it's economically enhancing for the country, and then you bring this pull through from the lower education.
I'll just give you an example, Nozipho, of a project that KPMG embarked on about 2 years ago. We employed 64 graduates who were unemployed, and we arranged with the Department of Public Works to place them there completely. And we provided them with computers and then helped them with soft skills. And we gave them an undertaking that we will make sure after the 12 months of training, they will find a job. And thankfully, after the year of training, 40 of them were employed by the Department of Public Works, and the balance got employed in the normal commercial environment. And I think I would encourage a lot more companies out there to do that sort of thing, so that at least they get some kind of experience, which also makes them more employable.
Terry, I think what absolutely excites me about Enactus is this idea that by bringing in an entrepreneurial mindset within the universities, where these young people also go out and create employment and create entrepreneurs in the process who are not necessarily university graduates themselves, then you have an economies of scale, not a problem, but economies of scale solution that is coming through.
Right, and it's a new mindset. It also inspires younger students, all the way through the education system, to think about more innovation and more solution orientation and more solution thinking, be it through arts education, etc. But as they go into college and Enactus students, well, one of the things I'd love to prove to everybody and all the viewers is just how innovative and how sustainable these projects are. So every year we bring together all 36 top competitors from around the world, these top students. Last year it was in Beijing. This year we're proud to be in Johannesburg, so October 14, 15, and 16. Anybody can come to the Sandton Convention Center, just register, and watch these students in action. Now they're judged based on their impact and their sustainability. So it's very important to us as an organization that it's not just a quick sprint and an idea and it's it's a glamorous concept. It really needs to be sustainable in thinking and business innovation.
And I think that's really exciting, because we know that the survival rate of new businesses, and this is not unique to South Africa, is very, very low. And so with that, let's quickly go back to Lagos. And Stephen, I want us to perhaps think of a sector-specific approach and maybe draw some insight insight from you from the hospitality industry in particular. Are there industries that are positioned for quick wins when it comes to engaging young people with an entrepreneurial mindset, where private sector players could really begin to tap into young minds to get the kind of people optimization that they're looking for? And does your industry, is your industry one of those rather?
Yes, in a way we tend to want to recruit and retain a number of people in the hospitality sector because we have a large number of hotels in Nigeria, but there are also pressures on the sector in terms of the profitability of the sector given the volume of trade and seasonal nature of it. However, what they tend to do is have core staff and then bring in people when they're required on contract basis. But the long-term issue here, in my judgment, is that the African economy has to be diversified. If you look beyond mining, if you look beyond telecom, you look beyond oil and gas, most of the pharmaceuticals, most of those other sectors are not as developed as they should be. The IT sector is growing. There are a lot of young guys, is their technology trying to make a hay in that sector. But beyond those sectors, what else do we have? The agro-allied sectors is another area where you can have multiplier effect, particularly in terms of food preservation and processing, apart from the core agric itself. Those areas have not been fully tapped into, and we have opportunities to diversify our base, particularly from oil and mining, all these natural resource-based economic activities, so that there are sufficient employment opportunities for young people to look into and to get engaged in. Without that, there's a limited optimization that can happen. Given where we are starting from, we have an army of unemployed. Although there are activities being undertaken at the moment through the Youth Council and creation of senior special assistants for youth matters and all the rest of them, so that youth parliament, so that youth policies can be entrenched in governance. However, there is a very limited number of youths that are participating in these things.
Right.
Because if you're unemployed, you're unemployed. Looking for a job is a job in itself. So when you have situations where people are desperate to do things, we have sectors like, for example, Nollywood is helping a lot of youth in Nigeria in particular, entertainment and music. They are trying their best. In fact, it's one of those areas that governments have limited participations.
Right.
And we've recorded a lot of success.
So, Stephen, let me jump in there, because I think the question that Stephen has got into, and perhaps, Yunus, you can answer this. If we take a look at the projects that have been coming through the Enactus process, are they showing a diversification of economic activity across African markets? Or are we still seeing what Stephen is describing as a problem, a commitment to the sectors that we think are our competitive advantage?
Yes, I think there are opportunities for diversification. If you look at a specific project that Germany undertook a few years ago, it's $1 to produce a set of spectacles, right? And that was distributed in East Africa. Now, if you could have got that sort of sustainable into a much larger scale, I mean, you'd find millions of people who would be prepared to spend $1 to get a set of spectacles for the communities out there that really cannot afford the fancy spectacles that we see out there. So I think if you get companies that come in and say, well, that's a viable project. If you can produce a set of spectacles for $1, you will then grow the market in that space and help to diversify the business of, let's call it, what we have in Africa. Like Stephen was saying, there's too much of a concentration on specific industries.
Right.
And like we have always with Africa, we export the raw materials and import the value-added products. If we can do that, we'll create employment where we actually convert the raw materials into value-added products and really get the youth involved to really develop the skills.
I think about Yunus, the Irish team from last year, using an Airbnb technology model to solve their own issues. Here these students didn't have a nice quiet place to study while they were in school, and in fact they wanted to focus on their education. So they looked at the opportunity in Ireland where elderly were having all of these empty rooms and there was a loneliness factor. So they did a matchup with technology, created this new solution that's sustainable and could be taken to many, many countries.
Greg, let me give you the final word on this. If you take a look at the conversation that we've had today, the exciting developments that we hear from Enactus, the persistent challenges that we're also hearing from the Nigerian market, do you get a sense that the future is a little bit brighter for bridging that disconnect between the graduate outcomes that we're seeing from universities and the needs of the African market?
We're on the road. I do believe so. There is a dialogue between educators, commerce, etc. I think the other thing is that in South Africa, particularly, the economy is going to be underpinned by entrepreneurialism, education, and innovation. If we can get that right, and young people can have hope and feel that they can contribute to the economy and provide for their families, I think that they're going to have hope. And that hope will take them forward. So from an economic perspective, entrepreneurialism, innovation, education are the factors that will get us through to an employed economy.
Well, on that final word and words of wisdom from my team here in Johannesburg as well as Lagos, it's a very big thank you for joining us. A thank you to Terry Torok, the Global Chief Innovations Officer for Enactus, Yunus Suleman, former Chairman of KPMG South Africa and Chairman of Enactus, Greg Vercellotti, Executive Director at Dariel, and of course joining us from Lagos and giving us his insights, Stephen Adebayo Ajayi. He's the current Country Director of Northcroft in Nigeria and the Executive Chairman of the Weavers Hotel in Abuja. For you at home, if you want to be a part of these conversations, you can certainly do that. That's by following us on Twitter at CNBC Africa, at The Real Nosy. Don't forget to use the hashtag InvestAfrica. Until next time, it's goodbye.